I want to talk all about how the timelines have shifted. Now, as someone who's able to tap into multiple different timelines, both in the past and in the future, I can tell when a timeline has shifted when I receive new information about the future. Now, please keep in mind that any and all timelines exist and coexist simultaneously, so it truly is impossible to predict the future for certain. That being said, when a timeline is most probable or dominant, it comes through more clearly than other timelines. We're really just talking about quantum physics here, and it's pretty cool. Now, the timeline I want to talk about that has shifted collectively is cosmic disclosure. Now, this is something that I have actually never really talked about and deep dived into as far as a potential. So I am beyond excited that this information came through and that this is a very real possibility moving forward. So before we get into all of the different forms of disclosure, this new timeline probability, and not only that, but how it's going to affect us, both individually and collectively, and even the timelines of when this is going to happen, I just want to mention that the topic of this video really came through synchronistically. I was teetering on a couple of different topics for today. My mind wasn't really set. I didn't have an intention or focus. And so it was one of my coworkers, Lauren, who this morning, she's like, well, why don't you just go on the website and look up a video or a topic on your Surprise Me feature? So essentially the website has this, I call it almost like a video oracle card deck. So you go there, you set your intentions, what do I need to know? You click Surprise Me and the right video of mine in my own library pops up. And so I did this, and so crazy, a 14-second video. I mean, how many 14-second videos do I have and really just have uploaded on my website? Not many. They're all long-form content. 14 seconds talking about how cosmic disclosure is happening and how we need to get prepared. That video was like from 2018. So it was pretty old. And immediately I knew that I needed to talk about cosmic disclosure. And once again, when I tapped in, this is when this new possibility, this new timeline came about. So if you want to be surprised, if you want some synchronistic information in your life, go over to the website, literally go under Explore, hit the Surprise Me feature, and see what information awaits for you, because it's always really powerful, even when I do it for myself. So let's talk about disclosure. Now, up until this point in time, I've talked about individual and collective cosmic disclosure. And when I say disclosure, I'm specifically talking about us contacting interdimensional beings, obviously the governments or the powers that be, bringing that full disclosure to us. So I'm not just talking about my or this community, I'm really talking about the mainstream disclosure. Yes, UFOs are real. Yes, aliens exist. Now what? So it's pretty wild, right? Now, up until this point, especially in the past couple of years, the main focus of disclosure, especially since we've heard from our own galactic friends, has all been about internal. It is going to be internal, individual disclosure, because disclosure, when it happens, especially in a very visceral way, it's life-changing. I mean, anyone who's ever seen a UFO or had an unexplained event, or those other people who have had a portal open up in front of them and aliens walk out, it's life-changing. Everything about your reality, your perception, and even your DNA shift. So this is why we've heard up until this point that disclosure, cosmic disclosure, is going to happen in an individual way. because the collective just isn't there yet. I mean, we can't even love our own human population for their skin color or their culture or their language or their religious beliefs, let alone loving a blue alien from another dimension that has a completely different language and belief system. So we're not there yet, but apparently we're getting there. And apparently there's a huge push or a huge rush on disclosure in general. So the timeline that came through to me, and I have talked about this timeline before, the timeline is 2035. And I think it was maybe a year or two ago where it was the Galactic Federation who also mentioned that timeline. And that's the same timeline that I picked up on today. Once again, things can change, and that's why you got to recheck into these timelines. Right now, the planet is contracted to have full, let's say, collective cosmic disclosure by 2035. So leading up to this date of 2035, the powers that were, the individuals who were in charge and still trying to push through their power and control, what they're trying to do, which we've talked about extensively, they are trying to control the alien narrative. They're trying to control cosmic disclosure. They're either trying to discredit it or make it seem like a joke or make it seem like some sort of weird government setup or cover-up. There's a lot of different sort of tactics and agendas being thrown out right now. But the main intention that this shadow government has is to control the narrative away from peaceful contact and away from really inviting that cosmic galactic civilization in. There's also a lot of cover-up around the bad ETs, specifically the reptilians. Of course, they don't want us to know about them, and this is what we're going to talk about. So keep this in mind, 2035. Now, it's no surprise that the New World Order is really planning to implement their tactics and strategies for pretty much global domination and depopulation leading into 2030. Right? So they're really trying to derail us in every chance that they can get before we hit 2035, which is fascinating because a lot of things will change once we have full cosmic disclosure. Now, of course, we could say, you know what? There have been governments that have said that these beings and these craft exist. There have been many declassified CIA documents. The information is out there. If you want to look, it's there, but we are talking about every person on the planet really getting disclosed to. And there's a variety of ways that this could happen. It could be literally what it looks like an alien invasion. Most likely they wouldn't just come from the sky because it would feel like a threat. It really would. And that's how we have been programmed to perceive it as well. So that would be an absolute catastrophe. It has to be done in a different way. So we could talk about normal collective disclosure being either some sort of like, non-government organization, even though we know that they're corrupt, saying, yep, they exist. Like, what do we do about it? Maybe they create some sort of division or force in a non-governmental way, right? In a globalization sort of way, and say, okay, we've put this force together with all of the nations on planet Earth, and we're going to deal with this alien problem, right? That's really how they're going to pose it. That could be a form of disclosure. Obviously, having a really big sighting and having that be filmed many times over or live streamed, that could be a form of disclosure. Now, what I haven't really seen, and I've always sort of fantasized about ever since I learned about reptilians, was, and I've mentioned this a couple of times over the years, how amazing would it be if we had a major celebrity like Beyonce or Justin Bieber shapeshift into their true form, as we all know, live on stage in front of not just hundreds of thousands of people, but potentially millions and millions of people based on their cameras and their photos and their videos and whatnot, right? Like, that's always been my dream, but that's never something that I've actually channeled. Well, today, when I actually tapped in on it and said, okay, well, what do we need to know about disclosure? I got this timeline 2035, and then I also received And it was like a metaphorical imagery that came to mind as well, and it was like reptilian disclosure, which once again, that's never even popped in as a possibility, like a real possibility. It's always been sort of a fantasy thought of mine that this is what really needs to happen, and yet it's never been there. And today it was there. And the metaphorical image that I kept getting is literally like a rug being pulled from underneath humanity in a way. I mean, it sounds sort of dramatic, and it is, but it is like, a wolf in sheep's clothing, really. And all of a sudden, the wolf reveals itself. And this apparently is a really good probability moving into the next couple of years as far as real cosmic collective disclosure. And think about the infinite number of ways that that could happen. I did not pick up on a celebrity shapeshifting on stage. I actually didn't pick up on how this would happen, but I definitely picked up on the timeline and probability that it would be a reptilian disclosure. Obviously, on their end, an unwanted reptilian disclosure. Now, what this would do, depending on how it would present itself and how it was done or how it would happen, what this would do would be immediately dismantling almost every single system on planet Earth. Once again, it depends on how this disclosure happens. But if there is a realization among human beings on planet Earth that every financial, religious, education, and the corporate structure and system that our entire planet has been built on has actually been built and run to feed not just the top 5 richest families, but to feed a global elite of off-world beings. I want you to think about that for a second. If anything, I want you to imagine that as a very real possibility, because maybe by focusing on that, we can help to create that. Because, yeah, sure, I mean, humans can hate the rich because we're all suffering and they're continuing to make more and more money, which makes absolutely no sense. And they don't even care about the money, they care about the power. And usually they're doing some pretty messed up things, as we've seen a lot of disclosure recently. Sure, we can hate the rich. As long as they're humans, we can hate them. But an alien who keeps us under their thumb, who keeps us poor, who keeps us dull, who keeps us programmed, now that's a different story. That's something that we have not been exposed to. That's something that we have not been programmed around. That's something that most humans, or 99%, have never even thought about. If that were to be the case, the collapse and dismantling of the system would happen rapidly. And it almost feels like this is I don't know if the word fail-safe is like the right word in this context. I don't really know what that means, but it almost feels like it's a last resort of if nothing is going in the right direction, if we're not even close to collective disclosure by 2030 to going into 2035, then I think this is what's going to happen. I think we're going to we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off. We are just going to pull the rug from underneath. It's just going to happen. I'm not a part of that, but it's just going to happen. The rug is going to be pulled from underneath humanity, and real cosmic disclosure is going to happen. The problem with something that's so extreme is that it will cause a lot of panic. It will cause a lot of, it could be quite detrimental for certain people who cannot handle that level of information, right? Now, a soft disclosure, which has been happening because they're able to control that narrative, is, oh yeah, the government is disclosing this document, and people who don't care about that or who aren't ready for it, they don't even know that that's being talked about in the news. It's got to be something big. I have a couple of other timelines, yeah. So there's a real big push between 2025 and 2028 for collective disclosure, whereas individual disclosure was more of a focus between 2020 and 2024. Like, let me ask you right now, who here has had some form of disclosure in the past 4 years between 2020 and 2024? And that could be through a dream, it could be a video, it could be some sort of like aha moment or download or realization. It could be looking up at the stars and feeling like you belong there more than here. It doesn't have to be seeing a giant UFO in the sky, or having an alien show up in your backyard, right? So keep that in mind, that disclosure happens in a variety of ways. Okay, now let's talk about the impacts of disclosure. So the impacts on the individual. The first thing that really happens with the individual is a huge perspective shift, right? I mean, for this community, it's not super shocking. Yeah, cool, aliens exist. Like, I'm just waiting for my own contact. Like, I get that. That's great. You're ready. You've got a welcome sign for the aliens. Fantastic. But for the majority of people who have never even thought about extraterrestrial life, it's going to be a huge perception shift, a massive, right? Like, who's God? And like, what created this planet if there are more intelligent life out there? Like, I mean, just like the amount of questions, like, talk about an existential crisis. Now, the other thing that happens too is, in general, more individual contact and more communications. As long as you're ready for that, it will happen, right? They will start contacting you or communicating with you, or just sort of appear in your life more. Like, maybe you have a dream and the word, Syrian comes to mind, and you're like, Syrian, that's interesting. I wonder if I type in Syrian beings into the search, and like, boom, they pop up, and then there's an article or a video that you're suggested, and I don't know, it'll come around your life a lot more. So be open to more contact and more communications as you get along in your own individual disclosure. And then with the individual disclosure as well, massive DNA activations. I've always said this, and I'll say it again. One day, and hopefully one day soon, I want to be out of a job. And the reason why is because I believe all of you can do exactly what I can do. I don't think that I'm special. I'm not some generational psychic. I haven't been trained by some yogi in the Himalayan mountains. Like, I believe that we can all gain access to this. And I really, truly believe that disclosure, especially making contact in one form or another, it's going to activate and shift your DNA. Just like I believe that the Galactic Federation summits every single month, like, that's my main intention. Yes, I want to give information to humanity, but I also want to activate their DNA to the highest frequency. Also, keep in mind, the reason why our DNA would activate when we get cosmic disclosure is because we are a hybrid species. Remember this? This is something I've channeled for a long, long time, that we are an amalgamation. We are the children of many different beings out there. We're essentially some giant experiment that worked out kind of, maybe, possibly. And when we start encountering even just the thought that they exist, we start activating those harmonics and frequencies within our own system, which is pretty badass. Yes, okay, and then I want to talk about the impacts on the collective, and then I want to talk about a couple more things that are really important, like, right now, because there's a lot of shit going down, and, someone was mentioning solar flares, and it's been intense. So impacts on the collective, I've kind of mentioned these things, but religion falling big time. New religions created. This is something that I've picked up on a couple of times. When we get full cosmic disclosure, there is going to be a variety of religions created around the alien beings being our God. So those really extreme fanatics who love God and Jesus and think that they're our savior are all of a sudden going to praise the Anunnaki or the Greys or the Reptilians even, possibly. I mean, it'll be fascinating to watch. Also, a shift in power and representation. I've already covered that. And then with the reptilian disclosure, like I said, systematic collapse, financial collapse. And then eventually, and this is what I picked up on in 2050, so it's a little ways away, galactic cooperation And what I wrote down here is bigger than AI. So right now we are seeing almost every single industry, along with the education system, shifting and changing because of the emergence of AI, which is scary and exciting all at the same time. And it really feels like full cosmic disclosure for the collective. It's going to be a bigger impact than AI, which is pretty unbelievable to even fathom. But it will be, because all of a sudden we have access to their technology, which is literally out of this world. All right. And then, oh yeah, and then I also wrote down explosion of the Great Awakening. That it's really going to bring about this great awakening, even if it's in the form of reptilian disclosure, and it's going to be really scary for a lot of people. It's still going to bring about a really massive shift in consciousness. Okay, fantastic. If you guys want to know more about reptilians, about the prophecy planet, the prism planet, and everything in between, including manifestation and whatnot, just head on over to my website. It has all of that and so much more, and definitely check out the Surprise Me feature. Right after this video, I'm going to be hopping onto Instagram Live, and then I'm also going to be posting that video on my Instagram page, which is just at elizabeth.april. And I really want to talk about these upcoming hurricanes in Florida. I really think that they don't feel natural. That's all I'm going to say, but I've got more to say about that. And then if you're interested in the collapse of the Illuminati and all of the trafficking stuff that's going on right now, especially with Diddy and many other players within that realm, please check out my Diddy and the Illuminati collapse video part 1 and part 2, because I really go into detail about what's happening and what to expect, but it is happening and they are scared. So I am excited. I love you guys so much. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm, especially after getting shadow banned. Subscribe to the channel. I know about 60% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed, so please do that. And share this video with anyone else who's super curious about cosmic disclosure. That's all from me. I love you guys so, so much. I will see you in the 5th dimension.